Hello everyone. So today I'm going to speak about a blog post I had up in my blog previously, which spoke about human behavior motivators, let's say, or our action drivers. So the reason why I wanted to speak about this in video form is I feel like, especially from my experience, when I'm writing, I enter all those, let's say, mini infinite loops of getting lost in the text and trying to be rigorous and precise with the speech, but with the words, sorry. But then this might actually lose the practicality of the situation in some sense. So I thought maybe do a video form to make it much more loose, let's say. So without further ado, let's get to it. Just one more thing I wanted to mention with regards to the channel is this channel is basically going to start off with the mini blog series in which I'm going to speak about the blog post I had up in my blog previously, which had a variety of topics such as detection of life outside Earth. We spoke about chaos theory as well briefly. So I'm going to speak briefly about those things, and then on the long term it's basically going to be by way of podcast conversations with different people, scientists, philosophers, just people with experiences, and just think out loud. So without further ado, let's get to it. So the first thing I mentioned in the blog post was, can we actually know our behavior motivators, let's say? And the one answer to this is actually yes and no. So it's yes because most of the times when we're doing anything, we actually have reasons for that action. So we say, I did this because of that, or I did that because of this. And the reason why it's no is because the answer is not always precise, let's say. So if we try to give an example of this, let's say you were invited to a social gathering, and then you reject this invitation and say, I reject this because I don't know anyone there, or my friend is not going to be there, let's say. So this is our reason, or the reason, let's say, to be specific. But it might not actually be precise. So it might be undercovering, let's say, social anxiety or whatever. So one idea I had in mind while reading the book The Black Swan by Nassim Taleb is to basically think of a cause rather than the cause, which actually seems tricky because it might seem like it's two sides of the same coin. So what's the difference here? But there is a very big difference, because when you consciously think that, let's give it in the context of our specific example, which is the social gathering. So you said, I don't want to go because my friend is not there. So this is the cause. But when you think about it as a cause, you say, this is one of the reasons that I don't want to go to the social gathering, let's say. And the reason why a cause is much more productive than the cause is, I feel like it's much more probable to change the behavior when you think of it as a cause. So you might think, okay, so my friend is not there, but maybe I don't want to go because I'm socially anxious in social gatherings. So when you have more than one reason, the probability of changing that specific behavior is much more, basically. And we're not saying that you should lay out more than one reason. What we're saying is just don't treat one reason as the reason or the only reason, because the probability of changing a behavior based on that is much less, I guess. And you might ask, like, why change the behavior in the first place? It's like changing behavior is in some sense equal to growth. So I'm assuming if you're a conscious being, then there are certain aspects of your behavior you want to change. So given that assumption, then everything we said before might seem like a plausible way to go, I guess. So the second part of the blog post spoke about dividing the behavior motivators, let's say, into psychological ones and reasoning ones. So you have drivers of our behaviors that are first-person subjective experiences, such as emotions, like anger drives certain behavior, and then we have the reasoning ones, which requires much more complexity, computational complexity. So giving yourself reasons and all those things to do something. So another explanation of this is actually in a book I read by Daniel Kahneman and Tversky is the system 1, system 2 thinking. So these are abstract models to represent human, let's say, ways of thinking. So you have system 1, which is the instantaneous part of thinking, which is much more, let's say, pushed forward by emotions and psychological states. And system 2 is much more of a computationally complex system, which drives a person to behave a certain way based on reasoning and problem solving and all those things. So you have system 1 and system 2. So you can think of system 1 as the psychological drivers, I mentioned it, and you can think of system 2 as the reasoning part of our behavior motivators, I mentioned in the blog post as well. So the main idea, let's say, of the blog post is to motivate one to actually think consciously about the behavior motivator, let's say, which is another way of saying system 2 overriding system 1 and trying to take lead, let's say. So this is one approach, but it might not be always the intended consequence, because sometimes when system 2 overrides system 1, let's say, it tries to ignore its, let's say, effects. So it starts to think that, okay, I made a decision based on rational, logical reasons, but sometimes it might be disguised into system 1, let's say. So this is one approach to actually put in mind. So these are the main 2 points I wanted to clarify about the blog post. And I'll also attach the blog post link to the description, and I'll also as well put the visual representations I drew with regards to the blog post as well. So this might seem like it's only applicable to behaviors we want to change in the future, or behaviors we don't want to engage in the future. But this is somehow missing the point, because if we turn this around and apply this principle to behaviors we like to engage in, or behaviors we feel like we're productive doing, then also projecting a cause might actually ignite the fire in this productive behavior, let's say, because you don't have a certain reason why you're doing this. You're constantly stumbling upon different reasons to actually make you ignite the fire of this very productive behavior, let's say. So this is applicable to both behaviors we want to change and behaviors we actually like to engage in. The other point I wanted to mention with regards to this is sometimes actually projecting a certain cause or projecting the cause to our behaviors is actually done subconsciously. It doesn't have to be consciously the case. So we have to actually undo this rather consciously and say, maybe this is one of the reasons why I'm doing this, but it's not the reason. And I really hope you find this video beneficial, and see you soon with our second mini blog series, hopefully. Thank you very much for watching.